The day Desmond decided to humiliate the janitor was the day he unknowingly destroyed his career. Desmond sneers at the new black janitor, deliberately spilling coffee on the freshly mopped floor. "Clean it again," he smirks. "That's what we pay you for." The janitor silently mops while Desmond mocks her natural hair to his laughing colleagues. Her shoulders remain straight, her eyes fixed on her task. The white executives chuckle nervously, their discomfort visible, yet outweighed by their desire to please the VP of operations. As she turns to leave, he calls out, "Hey, Mop Girl, you missed a spot!" The janitor locks eyes with him, saying nothing, but her expression promises consequences. Something in her gaze makes Desmond's smile falter for just a second before he recovers with a dismissive wave. Little did Desmond know who was really behind that janitor's uniform. Alice Johnson arrives at Pinnacle Industries on a quiet Monday morning, her designer bag tucked away and replaced with a simple backpack. Her father, Gilbert Johnson, the rarely seen CEO and majority shareholder, asked her to evaluate the company culture before appointing her as COO. Multiple advanced degrees in corporate restructuring and an impeccable track record in turning around toxic workplaces make her uniquely qualified for both roles. 2 weeks as a janitor, Gilbert had said during their private dinner. See how they behave when they think no one important is watching. Alice agreed. Understanding a company's foundation meant experiencing its lowest levels. She reports to facilities management, where her credentials are a carefully crafted fiction. The supervisor hands her a uniform, equipment, and a schedule, with minimal training. "Most floors are straightforward," he explains. "Watch out for the executive level, especially Mr. Richards." Alice encounters Desmond Richards within her first hour. He emerges from the elevator as she cleans the lobby, his tailored suit and commanding presence drawing attention from everyone, except Alice, who continues working methodically. "You're new," he states, not a question. Before Alice can properly introduce herself, he interrupts. "My office needs attention first thing every morning, and stay out of sight during client meetings." His eyes scan her dismissively. "We prefer a certain professional appearance when clients visit." Throughout her first day, Alice observes how other employees take their cue from Desmond. Junior executives mimic his dismissive tone. Administrative staff avoid eye contact. Only Maria from HR and Jamal from IT acknowledge her with basic courtesy, a simple good morning or thank you when she cleans their areas. Alice notes how Desmond's behavior shifts dramatically between different employees. With white colleagues, he's collegial and respectful. With minority staff, his tone becomes condescending, his feedback harsher. These subtle differences would be invisible from an executive office, but are glaringly obvious from her current vantage point. That evening, Alice meticulously documents her observations in a small notebook while cleaning Desmond's office after hours. She notices a folder carelessly left on his desk labeled Diversity Hires Damage Control, with her father's signature at the bottom of a memo. The signature looks wrong. The slant too steep, the loop too narrow. Alice carefully photographs the forged signature, wondering just how deep Desmond's deception runs. 3 days into her role, Alice pushes her cleaning cart past the main conference room. Inside, Desmond addresses department heads, his voice carrying through the partially open door. "These departments are underperforming," he states, pointing to a projection. "Coincidentally, they're also where we concentrated our diversity initiatives last quarter." He emphasizes the word with subtle mockery. "The budget cuts must come from somewhere, and the data makes our decision clear." Alice notices the data lacks context, no mention of these departments' reduced resources or recent staffing changes. She leans slightly closer, her mop accidentally knocking against the doorframe. The room falls silent. Desmond's head snaps toward the sound. "Excuse me," he says to the executives before striding to the door and pulling it fully open. "What are you doing?" His voice is low but sharp. "Just cleaning, sir," Alice responds calmly. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "Yet you did." Desmond steps into the hallway, partially closing the door behind him. The executives remain visible through the glass walls, watching uncomfortably. Eavesdropping doesn't fall under your job description. I wasn't eavesdropping, sir. Alice maintains steady eye contact, though I couldn't help noticing the performance metrics seem to omit several relevant variables. Excuse me? The departments you've targeted for cuts recently had their administrative support reduced by 30%, Alice continues. That impact doesn't appear reflected in your efficiency calculations. I wasn't aware janitors had MBAs, Desmond says, loud enough for those inside to hear. His recovery is quick, his tone shifting to theatrical amusement. Cleaning supplies are in the closet, not the boardroom. You're paid to clean, not think. His colleagues laugh nervously as he returns, closing the door firmly behind him. Alice resumes mopping, noting which executives seemed uncomfortable with the exchange versus those who enjoyed her humiliation. Later, as Alice cleans the women's restroom, Maria from HR enters. After checking they're alone, she speaks quietly. I'm sorry about Mr. Richards. He wasn't always like this. Maria washes her hands slowly. Since Gilbert's been away, Desmond's been pushing boundaries, changing the culture. Some of us are just trying to survive until Mr. Johnson returns. Alice nods thoughtfully. And when will that be? The board meeting next week. Maria dries her hands. Hopefully things will improve then. As Alice leaves that evening, she receives a text from her father. Status report needed. Board pushing for immediate leadership transition. The next morning, Desmond calls an impromptu all-staff meeting in the largest conference room. Everyone means everyone, the email specifies. Alice arrives with other custodial staff positioned at the back of the room. Executives and managers occupy the seats closest to Desmond, creating a visible hierarchy of importance. Pinnacle Industries is entering a critical phase, Desmond begins, standing tall at the head of the table. Our new efficiency protocols will streamline operations and maximize shareholder value. He displays a PowerPoint detailing new expectations, extended hours, reduced breaks, stricter performance metrics. The changes disproportionately affect lower-level employees while executive benefits remain untouched. Questions? Desmond asks, his tone suggesting there shouldn't be any. The room remains silent until Alice raises her hand slightly. Desmond's eyebrow arches in irritation. The janitor has a question, he announces, generating uncomfortable chuckles. Go ahead, enlighten us. These new schedules require staff to stay until 7:30 p.m. 3 nights weekly, Alice says. Has there been any analysis of how this impacts employees with family responsibilities or childcare needs? The room grows tense. Desmond's smile doesn't reach his eyes. What's your name again? Alice, sir. Well, Alice, let me ask you something. Desmond leans forward. What's your educational background? Where did you get your business degree? I didn't say I... Exactly, Desmond interrupts. Someone who pushes a mop for a living doesn't understand what it takes to run a successful business. These decisions aren't made lightly, but they are made by qualified professionals. He gestures around the table. Perhaps focus on cleaning schedules rather than corporate strategy. Several executives snicker. Others stare at their notebooks, visibly uncomfortable. Now, Desmond continues, if there are no relevant questions, let's adjourn. As people file out, Desmond calls over his shoulder, Alice, stay behind. The conference room needs attention before our next meeting. The executives linger, finishing their coffee while Alice waits with her cart. Once the room clears, except for Desmond and 3 senior directors, he begins his performance. While you're here, he says loudly, deliberately knocking over a half-full coffee cup. The liquid spreads across the polished table. Oops, clumsy me. His colleagues watch as Alice silently begins cleaning the mess. You know, says Thompson, a sales director, moving unnecessarily close as Alice works. There are other ways to advance in a company like this. Some of us could put in a good word if you were nicer to certain executives. Alice maintains her focus on cleaning, her face neutral despite the implication. Desmond chuckles. Don't waste your time, Thompson. Some people just don't have what it takes to rise above their station. They finally leave, having created additional messes requiring attention. Alice methodically cleans each spill, documenting every word and action in her mental record. Through the glass walls, she notices Jamal from IT watching with obvious concern. That night, Alice calls her father and says, "I've seen enough. It's time for phase 2, earlier than we planned." "He did what?" Gilbert Johnson's voice, though quiet, carries an unmistakable edge through the phone. Alice sits in her modest apartment, janitor's uniform draped over a chair, her notes spread across the kitchen table. "The racism isn't even subtle anymore, Dad," Alice explains, scrolling through photos on her tablet. "Desmond's systematically dismantling your diversity initiatives while forging your approval. The targeted department cuts would eliminate primarily Black and Latino employees." Gilbert sighs heavily. "I knew there were problems, but this—" A pause. "How are your treatments going?" Alice asks, shifting topics momentarily. "Oncologist says I'm responding well. Another reason we need to accelerate the timeline." Gilbert's tone strengthens. "The board meeting is in 3 days. I'll announce you as my successor then." "And until then?" "Continue gathering evidence, leave nothing to chance." After ending the call, Alice stares at her reflection in the darkened window. Her father built Pinnacle from nothing, creating opportunities for people regardless of background. She makes a silent vow, not just to remove Desmond, but to reform the culture completely, honoring her father's original vision. The next morning, Alice cleans the HR department earlier than scheduled. Maria works alone, organizing personnel files. "You're here early," Maria notes with a genuine smile. "I noticed your department gets busy later," Alice replies, carefully mopping around Maria's desk. "Thought I'd get the major cleaning done now." Considerate, unlike some people around here. Maria continues sorting files, then hesitates. "Can I ask you something? How do you stay so dignified, despite how they treat you?" Alice considers her response carefully. "I believe every job has value, and how people treat others when they think no one important is watching reveals their true character." "That's profound for—" Maria catches herself. "For a janitor?" Alice finishes with a small smile. Maria blushes. "I'm sorry. That was exactly the kind of thinking I was criticizing." "No offense taken. We all have biases to overcome." Alice gestures toward the files. "Looks like performance reviews?" "Yes. Desmond wants them reorganized before the board meeting." Maria lowers her voice. "Between us, he's manipulating the data. Employees who challenge him mysteriously receive poor evaluations, especially minorities." Alice nods thoughtfully. "Has anyone reported this?" "To whom?" "HR reports to Desmond while Gilbert's away. Complaints disappear." Maria's shoulders slump. 3 people filed harassment claims last month, all lost in the system." Later, Alice positions her cleaning cart near the IT department, where Jamal works alone troubleshooting a server. "System giving you trouble?" she asks, emptying his trash bin. "Desmond rushed an implementation without proper testing." Jamal doesn't look up from his screen. "Then blamed my team when it crashed. 2 were fired last week, both women of color with perfect performance records." Alice absorbs this information while wiping down surfaces. "That doesn't seem fair." "It's not. But speaking up is dangerous." Jamal finally looks at her. "Why are you interested anyway?" "Just trying to understand the place I work," Alice says simply. Throughout the day, Alice strategically positions herself to overhear conversations, using her invisibility as a janitor to gather intelligence. She befriends security guards with genuine kindness, securing key card access to all floors when needed. That evening, she makes 2 calls from her apartment. First, to Pinnacle's outside counsel. "This is Alice Johnson, Gilbert Johnson's daughter," she identifies herself. "I need documentation prepared for potential terminations and legal actions. Highest confidentiality required." Her second call reaches colleagues at competing firms who've encountered Desmond at industry events. "I need honest accounts of any racist or discriminatory behavior you've witnessed," she explains. "On the record, with dates and details." Alice updates her files with new information, building a comprehensive case. While reviewing Desmond's email screenshots provided by a confidential source, she discovers something alarming: a detailed plan to present Gilbert with a forced retirement package at the upcoming board meeting, citing his health concerns as justification for immediate leadership change. Alice closes her laptop, her path forward crystal clear. Desmond isn't just targeting employees, he's orchestrating a coup. Desmond strides through the office with newfound confidence the following morning. His coup plans well in motion. He no longer bothers masking his true nature. The executive floor buzzes with tension as he implements a new, enhanced productivity tracking system for custodial staff. "Effective immediately," he announces to the facilities manager loud enough for Alice to hear nearby. "Janitorial staff must check in every 30 minutes via the new app. Any gap in reporting will trigger immediate supervisory review." The facilities manager protests weakly. "Sir, they're cleaning across multiple floors. Having to stop every half hour will actually reduce efficiency." "Are you questioning my directives?" Desmond's voice drops dangerously. "No, sir, I'll implement it immediately." Alice receives her tracking notification minutes later. The system requires her to take photos of completed work areas with facial verification to prove she personally performed the tasks. The requirements border on harassment, clearly designed to humiliate rather than improve performance. By mid-morning, Desmond hosts potential investors in the main conference room. As the catering staff arranges refreshments, he suddenly points toward Alice, who cleans windows in the adjacent hallway. "You, come here." He snaps his fingers. "Our catering seems understaffed today. Serve coffee to our guests." Alice complies professionally, moving to the credenza to prepare the service. She feels the investors watching her uncomfortably as Desmond continues his presentation. "As you can see, Pinnacle Industries maintains exceptional standards at every level," Desmond declares, while Alice carefully pours coffee for the first guest. "Even our support staff represents our commitment to excellence." As Alice serves the lead investor, Desmond sighs dramatically. "Stand straight, please. Proper posture reflects company values." The investor accepts his coffee with a tight smile, making direct eye contact with Alice. "Thank you," he says pointedly. After the investors depart, Desmond corners Alice in the supply closet. "You deliberately made me look bad in there," he hisses, blocking the doorway. "I simply did what you asked, Mr. Richards," Alice responds evenly. "Don't play innocent. I saw those looks you exchanged with Davis." His face flushes with anger. "Your attitude is undermining company morale." "My attitude, sir? That's exactly what I mean." Desmond steps closer. "You think you're smarter than your position. Let me be clear. You're replaceable. Dozens would take your job tomorrow." "Is that a threat, Mr. Richards?" "It's a reality check." Desmond checks his watch. "Since you have so much energy for insubordination, you can clean the basement storage rooms. They haven't been touched in years." He walks away, satisfied with his punishment. What Desmond doesn't realize is that he's just granted Alice access to the company's archived records, boxes of documents predating digital conversion, stored and forgotten. Alice spends hours in the dusty basement, methodically examining files. She discovers patterns in personnel records spanning years, successful initiatives started by Black and Latino employees, subsequently credited to white managers in official documentation. Behind many of these reassignments, Desmond Richards' signature. As she organizes the evidence, a sealed envelope falls from between older files. It's addressed to Gilbert Johnson, marked "Confidential, Whistleblower Report." The seal remains unbroken. Inside, Alice finds a detailed complaint about Desmond's discriminatory practices from 3 years earlier, a report that never reached her father's desk. Alice slides the whistleblower report into her pocket, wondering how many other voices Desmond had silenced before they could reach her father. "Come in, Alice," Close the door. Desmond's voice carries artificial pleasantness as Alice enters his office the next morning. The day before the board meeting, his desk appears unusually organized, documents arranged in precise stacks. Alice stands quietly, hands folded at her waist, waiting. Desmond studies her, fingers steepled beneath his chin. You've been with us, 2 weeks now? He doesn't wait for confirmation. In that time, you've demonstrated unusual attentiveness to company operations. Alice remains silent, face neutral. Several people have noticed you taking notes. Desmond pulls her small notebook from his drawer, waving it casually. Found this in your cleaning cart. Interesting reading. Those are my personal notes, Mr. Richards. About Pinnacle employees and operations. His smile tightens. Given your position, that raises concerns. I note cleaning schedules and areas needing special attention, Alice responds calmly. Nothing inappropriate. Perhaps. Desmond leans back in his leather chair. But it could be interpreted differently. As, say, gathering information for a discrimination lawsuit? The accusation hangs in the air. Alice maintains steady eye contact, revealing nothing. Listen, Alice. Desmond's tone shifts to what he likely considers reasonable. I recognize ambition, even in unexpected places. Someone with your observational skills could be valuable in the right position. He slides a folder across the desk. I'm prepared to offer you a promotion to head of facilities management. Significant pay increase, office instead of a cart. All I need is this notebook and your signature on this NDA. Alice glances at the document without touching it. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Richards, but I'm comfortable in my current role. Desmond's facade cracks slightly. Don't be foolish. This opportunity won't come twice. Is there a problem with my performance as a janitor? No, but... Then I'll continue my duties as assigned. Alice takes a small step back. My notes help me remember my tasks, nothing more. The pleasantness evaporates from Desmond's expression. Let me be clear about your situation. I've handled troublemakers before. Jobs are hard to find for people like you, especially with negative references. People like me, Mr. Richards? People who don't understand their place. Desmond stands, emphasizing his height advantage. The board meeting tomorrow will solidify my position here. Changes are coming to Pinnacle, changes that won't favor those who oppose me. Alice maintains her composure, which visibly frustrates Desmond further. Tomorrow morning, you'll clean the executive bathroom during the board meeting, he orders. I want it spotless for the celebration afterward. You're dismissed. After leaving his office, Alice navigates to the IT department where Jamal works alone on a terminal. Need something? He asks, glancing up. Just emptying trash, Alice replies, closing the door behind her. Actually, I could use your help. Jamal's eyebrows rise skeptically. I've noticed concerning patterns in how Mr. Richards treats employees, Alice continues, particularly minorities. Join the club, Jamal mutters, returning to his screen. I'm gathering documentation, evidence of misconduct. Jamal's fingers pause over his keyboard. That's a dangerous game. Sometimes risk is necessary for change. After a long moment, Jamal sighs. What exactly are you looking for? By evening, Alice has secured digital evidence of Desmond's misconduct, including emails discussing managing the diversity problem and directives to hide complaints from Gilbert. Maria from HR quietly provides records of complaints that were supposedly lost. In her apartment, Alice prepares for the next day. She lays out a pristine executive suit, arranges documents in a leather portfolio, and reviews her comprehensive evidence file. Her expression remains calm, but determination radiates from her every movement as she rehearses exactly how tomorrow's confrontation will unfold. As Alice reviews her evidence, Desmond calls his allies on the board. Everything's set for tomorrow. Gilbert won't know what hit him. Morning light streams through Pinnacle Industries' glass facade as executives arrive for the board meeting. Desmond stations himself in the lobby, greeting board members with practiced charm. His tailored suit and confident smile project the image of a leader already assuming control. Alice pushes her cleaning cart through the executive floor, head slightly bowed, invisible to the power players gathering around her. She feels Desmond's eyes tracking her movements, his satisfaction palpable at seeing her in her proper place on this pivotal day. As she wipes down a decorative table near the boardroom entrance, Desmond approaches with two board members. "We had some issues with substandard cleaning recently," he announces loudly, ensuring others hear. "Standards have slipped in several areas during Gilbert's absence." The board members glance at Alice uncomfortably but say nothing. "The executive bathroom needs particular attention today," Desmond continues, addressing Alice directly. "I expect it immaculate for our post-meeting celebration." He turns to security personnel standing nearby. "She's restricted to ground floor and executive bathroom only. No exceptions." The security guard nods, avoiding eye contact with Alice. "Yes, Mr. Richards," Alice responds quietly, gathering her supplies. Desmond smirks, believing he's neutralized any potential disruption. He directs the board members toward the conference room with a theatrical sweep of his arm, his confidence bordering on arrogance. Board members continue arriving, taking their seats around the polished table. Conversation quiets as Gilbert Johnson enters last. His frame appears thinner from cancer treatments, but he carries himself with undiminished dignity. Board members rise respectfully as he takes his position at the head of the table. "Gilbert, wonderful to see you," Desmond effuses, rushing to pull out the CEO's chair. "How are the treatments progressing?" "Well enough," Gilbert responds simply, his expression revealing nothing. "We've all been concerned," Desmond continues, his voice projecting just the right amount of practiced sympathy. "The company has missed your guidance." "Has it?" Gilbert surveys the room. "I'm eager to hear your assessment." Meanwhile, Alice enters the women's locker room carrying her cleaning supplies and a garment bag. Maria waits inside, nervously checking her watch. "Everyone's in the boardroom," she confirms. "Are you sure about this?" "Completely." Alice changes quickly, transforming from janitor to executive. Her tailored suit fits perfectly, her hair now styled in a sophisticated updo. She applies minimal makeup with practiced efficiency, the transformation remarkable yet somehow revealing her true self rather than creating a disguise. "How will you get up there?" "Desmond restricted elevator access," Maria worries. "There's more than one way to reach the top." Alice smiles confidently. "The service elevator bypasses security protocols." In the boardroom, Desmond stands before a polished presentation, digital slides displaying carefully curated performance metrics. "As you can see," he explains, gesturing to color-coded graphs, "these departments consistently underperform despite increased resource allocation. The screen highlights primarily minority-led divisions. My restructuring proposal addresses these inefficiencies through strategic personnel adjustments." Board members review the data with furrowed brows. Gilbert watches silently, his expression unreadable. "Which brings me to a difficult but necessary discussion," Desmond continues, his tone softening. "Gilbert, your health situation requires consideration of leadership continuity, the stress of day-to-day operations during your treatment." He pauses as the executive bathroom door opens. All heads turn toward the unexpected interruption. The boardroom falls silent as Alice emerges not in her janitor's uniform, but in an impeccable executive suit, carrying a portfolio stamped with the company logo and her father's personal seal. Alice walks confidently into the boardroom, her steps measured and deliberate. Desmond freezes mid-sentence, his presentation forgotten as confusion, then recognition, then horror wash across his face in rapid succession. Board members stare in bewilderment at the transformation. The woman they had either ignored or seen being humiliated now commands the room with unmistakable executive presence. Gilbert rises from his chair, a smile breaking through his previously neutral expression. He moves to embrace his daughter, the gesture both professional and warmly paternal. "Board members," Gilbert announces, his voice stronger than it has been all morning. "Meet Alice Johnson, my daughter." Murmurs ripple through the room as connections form in stunned minds. Gilbert continues, "Alice holds 3 advanced degrees, including an MBA from Wharton, and has spent the last decade turning around troubled corporate cultures across multiple industries." He places a hand on her shoulder, pride evident in his gesture. "And as of this moment, she is Pinnacle Industries' new Chief Operating Officer." The silence deepens. Desmond's face drains of color, his knuckles white against the presentation remote still clutched in his hand. Board members exchange glances, processing this revelation and its implications. Alice takes a seat at her father's right hand, calmly placing her portfolio on the table and opening it with practiced precision. Her movements are unhurried, allowing the dramatic tension to build naturally. "Before Mr. Richards continues his presentation," Alice says, her voice clear and authoritative, "I'd like to share my observations from my 2 weeks working undercover as a janitor at my father's request." Desmond finds his voice, though it cracks slightly. "This is highly irregular. We have an agenda, which now includes this report," Gilbert interrupts firmly. "Please continue, Alice." Alice begins methodically outlining the systemic discrimination she witnessed, providing specific dates, times, and witnesses. She references emails, conversations, and decisions documented during her time undercover, painting a comprehensive picture of the toxic culture Desmond cultivated during Gilbert's absence. On Tuesday, March 8th, Mr. Richards explicitly targeted minority-led departments for budget cuts, while presenting misleading performance metrics that omitted crucial context. Alice slides documents toward board members. The original performance data shows these departments actually outperformed expectations when accounting for reduced resources. She continues through her evidence, her delivery precise and unemotional, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. Board members leaf through the documentation with increasingly troubled expressions. "Perhaps most concerning," Alice continues, placing a folder before her father, "is this diversity initiative report bearing your forged signature, creating the appearance that you approved discriminatory policies you had previously rejected." Desmond attempts to interject, but Alice calmly raises her hand. "I haven't finished, Mr. Richards. You've had 2 weeks to speak freely while I cleaned your office." She plays selected audio recordings captured during her tenure as janitor. Desmond's voice fills the room, making casually racist remarks, threatening employees' livelihoods and boasting about circumventing Gilbert's diversity mandates. "And finally," Alice says, removing the sealed whistleblower envelope, "this complaint addressed to my father 3 years ago detailing similar concerns was intercepted before reaching his desk. The pattern is clear and long-standing." Throughout her presentation, Alice maintains absolute composure, a stark contrast to Desmond's growing agitation. He shifts in his seat, loosens his tie, and repeatedly attempts to interrupt only to be silenced by Gilbert's raised hand. When Alice concludes, she turns to her father and the board. "This toxic culture doesn't reflect Pinnacle's stated values or my father's vision. Beyond the moral implications, it represents significant legal and reputational liability that threatens the company's future." "This is absurd," Desmond finally explodes, standing abruptly. "She set me up, planted herself here under false pretenses to fabricate evidence against me." "Did I fabricate the recording of you mocking my hair?" Alice asks calmly. "Or the email where you wrote that diversity hires require extra management to maintain standards?" "Those statements are being taken out of context." Desmond's defense grows increasingly desperate. "In a high-performance environment, certain cultural differences create natural friction. My job is managing that reality, not pretending it doesn't exist." His attempted justification only confirms Alice's accusations, drawing shocked expressions from several board members. "And the forged signature?" Gilbert asks quietly. "A miscommunication with your assistant," Desmond claims, sweat now visible on his brow. She believed you had approved the policy changes before your medical leave. Interesting, Gilbert responds, considering my assistant is sitting right there and confirms no such instruction was given. The executive assistant nods in confirmation, her expression grim. Gilbert surveys the room with quiet authority. I believe we have sufficient cause for an immediate vote of no confidence in Mr. Richards' leadership. The board members, faced with irrefutable evidence and potential legal exposure, vote unanimously to remove Desmond from his position. Security will escort you to clear your office, Gilbert informs Desmond calmly. Company devices and files remain Pinnacle property. As security personnel enter, Desmond's face contorts with rage and humiliation. Alice stands, meeting his furious gaze with composed dignity. You told me cleaning supplies are in the closet, not the boardroom, she says quietly. Today I'm here to clean house. As Desmond is escorted out, he shouts, This isn't over! I have friends in this industry who won't stand for this! The boardroom door closes behind Desmond and security, leaving a charged silence. Board members exchange uncomfortable glances, acutely aware of their complicity through inaction. Gilbert surveys the room with measured disappointment while Alice reviews her notes, giving everyone a moment to process the dramatic shift in power dynamics. I believe we should continue this meeting, Gilbert finally says, his tone businesslike, though clearly with a revised agenda. Over the next 3 hours, Alice presents a comprehensive plan for immediate corporate rehabilitation. Board members listen with rapt attention, their earlier skepticism replaced by growing respect as she outlines specific, actionable steps to address the damage done under Desmond's leadership. Effective immediately, Alice announces, all terminated employees from the past year will receive case reviews to identify potential discriminatory dismissals. Those wrongfully terminated will be offered reinstatement with back pay. She establishes a legitimate diversity task force with real authority and reporting structure directly to the CEO's office. This isn't about optics, she emphasizes. This is about building the innovative culture that drives actual performance. By meeting's end, the board unanimously approves Alice's appointment as COO and endorses her reform agenda. Several members privately expressed shock at how blind they had been to Desmond's manipulation of company data and culture. The following morning, Alice arrives early, now openly occupying the COO's office adjacent to her father's. She reviews personnel files, identifying key allies and enablers of the previous toxic regime. Her office door remains open, a deliberate contrast to Desmond's closed-door approach. Your 9 a.m. is here, her assistant announces. Thompson, the sales director who had made inappropriate suggestions to Alice during her time as a janitor, enters with forced confidence. Quite the performance yesterday, he begins, attempting familiarity as he takes a seat uninvited. Desmond obviously crossed lines, but between us some of this feels like an overreaction. Alice studies him silently before responding. Tell me, Mr. Thompson, what specifically feels like an overreaction? Well, he chuckles uncomfortably. Some comments get misinterpreted. Workplace banter isn't always politically correct. Banter, Alice repeats, like suggesting a janitor could advance by being nicer to certain executives. Thompson's smile falters. That was just joking around, nothing serious. Interesting. Alice opens a folder on her desk. Because we have 17 similar jokes documented from you in the past year, directed at female employees. Would you like to hear them quoted back? This is ridiculous. Thompson shifts in his seat, tie suddenly too tight. You can't possibly build a case from offhand remarks. Actually, we can and we have. Alice slides a document across the desk. This is your severance agreement, contingent upon a non-disclosure clause. The alternative is termination with cause, which would trigger mandatory reporting to industry oversight boards regarding the harassment claims. Thompson stares at the document, reality finally penetrating his privileged bubble. You can't do this. It's already done. Alice stands, signaling the meeting's end. You have until noon to decide which exit you prefer. Throughout the week, Alice conducts similar meetings with executives who enabled Desmond's behavior. Some demonstrate genuine remorse, acknowledging their failure to intervene. "I knew it was wrong," admits the marketing director, voice trembling slightly. "But I have 3 kids in college. I convinced myself staying silent was protecting my family." "Fear is a powerful motivator," Alice acknowledges. "But so is accountability. Are you willing to be part of rebuilding this culture the right way?" Those showing authentic responsibility receive second chances with clear expectations. Others who defend the old culture face termination or voluntary departure with carefully worded agreements protecting the company's interests. By week's end, Alice has restructured the executive team, promoting qualified individuals previously overlooked due to bias. Jamal from IT becomes Chief Technology Officer, his previously ignored cybersecurity proposals now fast-tracked for implementation. Maria advances to Senior Director of Human Resources, tasked with rebuilding trust in a department that had become weaponized under Desmond's influence. In a private conference room, Gilbert and Alice meet with Pinnacle's legal team to address Desmond's misconduct. "We have 3 options," explains the Chief Counsel, sliding folders across the table. "First, internal discipline only, termination with a strong NDA and financial settlement. Second, full cooperation with regulatory investigations but no proactive disclosure. Third, transparent approach, publicly acknowledge past failures while demonstrating corrective actions." Gilbert looks to Alice. "Your recommendation?" "Option 3, she responds without hesitation. "Settlements and NDAs protect Desmond and any company that might hire him. Transparency protects future potential victims." Gilbert nods his agreement. "Proceed with full transparency. Pinnacle will demonstrate leadership through accountability, not cover-ups." The decision sends shockwaves through the industry where such behavior is typically settled quietly to protect corporate reputations. Media outlets request interviews, sensing a rare break from the standard damage control playbook. Alice selects one respected business journal for an exclusive feature, using the opportunity to position Pinnacle as taking decisive action against discrimination rather than hiding from past failures. "Leadership requires experiencing all levels of company operations," she explains to the journalist. "When executives remain isolated in corner offices, they lose touch with the culture that actually drives success or failure." The article publishes with the headline, "Undercover Boss's Daughter Exposes Toxic Culture, Pioneers New Approach to Corporate Accountability." Meanwhile, Desmond launches a desperate damage control campaign, contacting allies at competitor firms and spreading misinformation about his departure. "Medical differences of opinion with Gilbert," he tells one CEO. "Personality conflict with his daughter," he explains to another. His narrative portrays him as the victim of family politics rather than his own misconduct. His strategy backfires spectacularly when 3 former Pinnacle employees, emboldened by Alice's actions, publicly share their experiences of discrimination under his leadership. Their accounts corroborate Alice's findings and add new dimensions to the pattern of abuse. 6 weeks into her tenure as COO, Alice presents her comprehensive reform plan to the board. The detailed strategy becomes a case study in corporate culture rehabilitation, blending accountability with forward-looking innovation. The approach emphasizes dignified treatment of all employees regardless of position, connecting ethical leadership directly to improved performance metrics. Early results prove promising. Employee satisfaction scores rise for the first time in 3 years. Productivity increases across departments previously labeled underperforming. Turnover rates drop significantly, particularly among minority employees. Alice ensures Jamal and Maria receive public recognition for their integrity during the investigation. At the company's quarterly all-hands meeting, she personally acknowledges their courage. "Transformation requires allies at every level," she tells the assembled staff. "The true measure of our success won't be financial statements, but whether every person in this company feels valued for their contributions, regardless of their title or position." As the meeting concludes, Alice's assistant hurries forward with an urgent message. A legal letter has arrived from Desmond's attorney, claiming wrongful termination and demanding reinstatement with compensatory damages for reputational harm. Alice reads the document calmly, unsurprised by this desperate countermove. As she finishes, her phone buzzes with a notification. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has opened a formal investigation into Desmond's conduct, requesting Pinnacle's cooperation. Alice sets both documents on her desk, knowing the real battle has only begun. Desmond's downfall must be absolute to truly protect the vulnerable throughout the industry. 6 weeks after his termination, Desmond Richards strides into the hearing room with practiced confidence. His expensive legal team flanks him, briefcases bulging with motions and counter-allegations. The polished veneer of his appearance, custom suit, fresh haircut, authoritative posture, projects the image of an executive temporarily inconvenienced rather than a man fighting for his professional survival. The room fills quickly with industry representatives. What began as a standard wrongful termination dispute has evolved into a watershed moment for corporate accountability. HR directors, diversity officers, and legal counsel from competing companies pack the observer seats, recognizing the precedent-setting potential of today's proceedings. Desmond nods to several former colleagues, receiving stiff acknowledgments or awkward glances in return. His attorney leans close, whispering reassurances about their strategy. They plan to portray Alice as privileged and manipulative, the entitled daughter orchestrating a calculated takeover at any cost. "All rise," announces the bailiff as the 3-person arbitration panel enters. Unlike typical employment disputes handled privately, Desmond's aggressive legal filings and public statements have transformed this into a formal hearing with binding authority under industry governance rules. Alice sits at the respondent's table, her expression composed and attentive. Gilbert joins her in support, though she leads the defense herself. Their legal team appears notably smaller than Desmond's arsenal of attorneys, projecting quiet confidence rather than overwhelming force. Desmond's lead counsel opens with precisely the narrative they telegraphed, casting him as victim of nepotism and corporate politics. Mr. Richards implemented necessary performance standards that sometimes proved uncomfortable for underperforming employees, the attorney argues. Ms. Johnson, with no operational experience at Pinnacle, engineered a deceptive scheme to remove him, manufacturing a discrimination narrative to justify a daughterly coup. Alice allows the characterization to stand unchallenged for now, taking careful notes rather than displaying any reaction. Desmond testifies first, presenting himself as a dedicated executive making difficult but necessary business decisions. "Performance metrics don't lie," he insists, gesturing toward charts displaying departmental statistics. "The divisions we targeted for restructuring objectively underperformed. That some were led by minorities reflects hiring patterns predating my leadership, not discriminatory intent." He portrays Alice's undercover operation as corporate espionage and entrapment, designed to manufacture evidence rather than discover truth. His testimony seemed to resonate with at least one panel member, whose questions suggest skepticism about Alice's methods. The momentum shifts when Alice begins cross-examination, her approach methodical rather than confrontational. "Mr. Richards, these performance metrics you've presented, who selected the evaluation criteria?" she asks. "I did, with my executive team," he responds confidently. "And who determined which factors would be weighted most heavily in these assessments?" "Again, my team made those determinations based on business priorities." Alice nods thoughtfully. "Did departments led by white executives operate under identical evaluation criteria as those led by minorities?" Desmond hesitates fractionally. "All departments were held to the same standards of excellence." "That wasn't my question," Alice notes calmly. "Were the specific evaluation criteria identical?" "Different business functions require different metrics," Desmond counters, his composure slipping slightly. "Indeed they do," Alice agrees before displaying side-by-side comparisons on the room's monitors. Could you explain why minority-led departments were evaluated primarily on short-term profitability, while white-led departments received significant weighting for strategic positioning and future growth potential? The questioning continues in this vein, systematically dismantling Desmond's narrative of objective assessment. But the true devastation begins when Alice calls her first witnesses, not Pinnacle employees, but executives from other companies where Desmond previously worked. A former colleague testifies about Desmond's candid statements at an exclusive industry retreat. He explicitly described techniques for removing diversity hires without triggering discrimination lawsuits. He called it managing organizational immune response to foreign elements. Another witness, a VP from a competing firm, describes Desmond's behavior at a private club. He advised me to create impossible performance standards specifically for minority employees, then document every minor infraction while overlooking similar issues from white employees. With each testimony, Desmond's face darkens. His legal team frantically passes notes, strategy crumbling under the weight of consistent accounts spanning his entire career. What emerges isn't an isolated incident or misunderstanding, but a calculated pattern of discrimination executed with increasing sophistication throughout his professional life. When Desmond returns to the stand, his composure has vanished. Under precise questioning about the whistleblower complaint he intercepted, he lashes out. Gilbert wanted results, not excuses. The diversity mandate was political window dressing, not serious business strategy. I did what was necessary to maintain standards while checking the right boxes for public consumption. So you admit to undermining Pinnacle's diversity initiatives? Alice asks quietly. Someone had to prioritize merit in the face of identity politics. Desmond's voice rises, his carefully constructed professional persona cracking completely. You people always cry discrimination when you can't perform at the level required. The room falls silent. You people, Alice repeats calmly. Desmond realizes his error too late. His final desperate attack targets Alice's character directly. You've never earned anything on merit. Daddy's little princess playing dress-up as an executive, using race as a weapon because you can't compete on ability. The panel chair interrupts, calling a recess. Desmond's attorneys huddle around him, urgently whispering damage control strategies, but his expression shows he already understands what they won't explicitly say. He's destroyed his own case. When the panel returns, their decision is unanimous. Beyond rejecting his wrongful termination claim, they issue a formal censure for professional misconduct and refer the case for potential civil rights violations. Desmond sits motionless as the ruling details how his behavior violated industry ethics standards and potentially federal law. As he gathers his papers with trembling hands, former colleagues avoid his gaze. His phone buzzes, his last potential employer rescinding their tentative offer after witnessing his implosion. Desmond Richards, once on track for a CEO position, now faces a future as an industry pariah. As Desmond exits in disgrace, Alice receives an urgent call. Several other companies are requesting her help in evaluating their corporate cultures. 3 months after the hearing, Pinnacle Industries thrives with renewed energy. The executive floor now features glass-walled offices and collaborative spaces, symbolic of the company's cultural transformation. Quarterly results exceed expectations. Employee satisfaction scores reach record levels, turnover drops 60%, and productivity shows double-digit increases, particularly in previously underperforming divisions now flourishing under new leadership. Alice implements her signature Walk in Their Shoes program, requiring executives to periodically work alongside employees at various levels. Though initially met with resistance from status-conscious executives, the program's results speak volumes. Companies adopting similar approaches report immediate insights into inefficiencies and cultural barriers invisible from corner offices. Pinnacle hosts an industry conference on inclusive workplaces. Gilbert, now in remission, delivers the opening address. I built this company believing I created a meritocracy, but failed to recognize how privilege shaped my perspective. My executive office insulated me from realities immediately visible from the janitor's closet. The conference features reformed executives who previously enabled toxic practices. Thompson admits candidly, "I convinced myself certain behaviors were normal. I never questioned who those unwritten rules excluded until facing consequences personally." Industry leaders listen with unprecedented receptiveness, recognizing the competitive advantages of inclusive cultures. Companies begin proactively reviewing their practices rather than waiting for public relations disasters. Jamal now heads Pinnacle's innovation department, where his previously ignored ideas flourish into market-leading technologies. Maria implements groundbreaking human resources policies that become industry standards. As the conference concludes, Alice receives an urgent message from Innovate Tech's CEO. "We need your help. Our culture is destroying us from within." Alice studies the message, knowing that transforming the industry's largest company would create a tipping point no competitor could ignore. 1 year later, Pinnacle stands transformed. The company has received multiple awards for workplace excellence and innovation. Employee satisfaction remains at record highs. Alice walks through the open office layout, chatting with employees across departments. She wears business casual attire, another shift from past rigid hierarchies. In her office, a janitor's badge hangs framed beside her degrees. "It reminds me that perspective determines what we see," she explains to a new hire. From the CEO's office, you see strategy and metrics. From the janitor's closet, you see people and culture. Both views are essential. Desmond's consulting practice failed, his reputation irreparably damaged. Alice takes no pleasure in his downfall, focusing instead on sustaining positive change without creating new power imbalances. The executive dining room has become a communal space. Alice regularly eats with staff from various departments, today joining Maria and Jamal in the main cafeteria. "Sometimes I can't believe how much has changed," Maria says, watching employees mingling comfortably. "The most significant changes aren't in policy but everyday interactions," Alice observes. "How people speak to each other, who gets heard in meetings." Gilbert approaches their table, now semi-retired and fully recovered. "The board approved the Pinnacle Foundation," he announces, "dedicated to workplace equity initiatives, funded by 5% of annual profits." "How does it feel seeing your legacy evolve?" Alice asks. "Humbling," Gilbert admits. "I never recognized barriers invisible from my perspective until you showed me." Later, Alice meets with Ramon, a newly hired custodian with an environmental science degree. He presents research on sustainable cleaning supplies. Alice listens attentively, then walks him directly to the operations director's office, ensuring he receives proper credit for his initiative. At orientation, Alice addresses new employees. At Pinnacle, position doesn't determine value. Everyone deserves respect. The measure of leadership isn't the power you wield, but how you treat those who can't immediately benefit you. She concludes with the company's new ethos. True character is revealed in how you treat those you believe can't help you. If you enjoyed this story of justice and transformation, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful narratives that will leave you thinking. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our daily uploads of satisfying revenge, redemption, and life-changing moments.
What happened today isn't just a story. It's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.